This is episode 81 of our talk, and today I have a guest I had on my wish list for a long time, artist Helga Stentzel. Let me introduce you to Helga. She is Siberian born, but lives in the UK, in London, and for a long time she lived seeing the world black and white, trying to be perfect. And this was inspired by a poem by Vladimir Mayakovsky. Do I pronounce that well?
Mayakovsky, yeah.
Yeah. And what is good, what is bad? We have these in the EU and in the rest of the world too, by the way. Helga definitely found her way in this world by active listening and active looking around without judgment or expectations. Her world is colorful, filled with humor and beauty. And if you feel watched while you enter her website, you're right. But you have to go and look for yourself. So, welcome, Helga.
Hi, Carolyn. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure, and thank you for all the kind words.
Well, it's true. And also being watched. And I had like, what is this? And then I saw it. I'm not going to spill any beans. People need to go and find out themselves. So that poem by Mayakovsky is very moralistic, isn't it? And kind of dark. Is that the way young children are taught how to behave? A bit like Dr. Spock in the Netherlands way back.
Probably not anymore, but I grew up in Soviet Union, so I still have vivid memories of what it was like back then. And yes, we all grew up knowing pretty much the same poems, the same songs, and it was all uniform. And if something wasn't right, it was deemed to be bad. There wasn't anything in between. And I think it was the philosophy of the country as well, like the political line we had at the time. So if you're not communist, you are wrong. And, it touched other areas of life as well. And I grew up in that environment. And for a very long time, I was obviously trying to be good because I didn't want to be bad. No child ever wants to be bad. So it took me a very long time to realize that there isn't any rights or wrong. There aren't that many rights or wrongs in the world, and there are lots of gray areas, and those areas are not necessarily gray. They can be colorful, so it's not like it's not it's not what's the word I'm looking for? A gradient. This is the word. It's not a gradient from black to white. It's all the colors in between.
Exactly. And let me tell you, on the other side, it's the same, because if you try to be a communist in other countries, you were doomed to be bad. So, yeah.
I think, this is just what we share as human beings. And I think it also has a lot to do with psychology, and I read a lot about it. And if you don't feel good, you always the first impulse that you have is look for someone to blame for it. And very often there is no one to blame. It's just life. Things don't necessarily always go the way you want them to go. And as an adult, I think it's your responsibility to find ways of dealing with that.
Very much so. But gladly, you found your way in this world with totally stunning work, colorful and with a lot of humor. So how did this specific work came to you? I mean, I've never, ever seen anything like it before. And it is really stunning. And I met you on the other art fair and I had like, oh my God, this is special. So tell me, how did you come to this?
I'm sure bits of my work have been done before by one artist or another. It's just that we don't know about them. I believe that ideas just float in the air, and I was lucky to grasp it and make it big. I just, put a lot of effort into that particular idea to make it visible. At
Mhm.
first, I created just one clothesline animal, and now I think I have more than 13. And I think
Mhm.
the more I work with the topic, the more visible the idea becomes, and the more recognizable it becomes. So now I'm, famous for doing laundry art, even though I wasn't doing it until 3 years ago. So yeah, I think it's all about the focus, and it's all about taking something that you find interesting and really working with it and trying to discover more layers about it, trying to add other meanings, look at the same idea from different perspectives. And this is what I truly enjoy. I also really enjoy the fact that it's fabric, it's something very tactile, and it's something very soothing and grounding. And I enjoy editing my work afterwards, like cleaning
Mhm.
up all the dust speckles and all, but I also enjoy creating the animals, like creating those laundry sculptures on the clothesline, making sure that the fabric is hung the way I want it to hang. So it's like a sculpture for me, and it's a lot of tactile work, which I really enjoy.
It is a sculpture, and I really saw these the three bananas that become a duck.
Oh, those ones, yeah, from the food
That
series.
is so funny.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's one of my oldest works because I started
Mhm.
with food.
Oh, okay.
So originally, so by training, I'm a graphic designer, and this is what I was doing. I also worked in advertising for a few years. Then I had my own children's brand, and I did T-shirts and gloves for children for a few years. And then I started, seeing all the little things in our everyday life, which I thought that people who were buying my gloves and T-shirts would also appreciate. And I started posting them on my Instagram in order to lift up their spirits and, to entertain them and to hopefully make them think about regular things a bit differently. And that took off. And over the course of 6 months, I think that part of my Instagram became prominent, and I no longer had to do gloves or t-shirts. I switched to doing art.
Mhm. Yeah, because you say graphic design,
Mhm.
etc., but you have a very specific way of seeing form and shape. So let's talk looking, active looking. How does that work for you? Because active looking is incredibly important. And I know because, as you see, I paint portraits, but I have to observe. And the observing brings me to see more than most people do.
Yeah,
Because when you do that, you enlarge your own perception, right?
absolutely.
So how does that work for you? Because you have something really special with form and shape.
Thank you, Karen. I think it's all about looking without expectations, because very often we have expectations, and when we know what's coming, there is no need to look, right? Because,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
example, you're in a supermarket and you see bananas on the shelf. You know they're bananas. What's the point of looking at them? They're just bananas, and you're, just thinking about something, thinking about your dinner or things you did during the day. So you just take those bananas absentmindedly, put them in your basket, done. And I think that if we did it differently, and this is what I do differently, I think for me, it's also a way of meditation and a way
Mhm.
of really switching my brain from everyday problems and life and really connecting with the world. So I don't say I do it all the time. I'm not always in my artist mode, but what I try to do is I look. So when I shop for bananas, I look at them, I carefully examine every single dot, and I examine the stem, and I look at those black bits at the end of the bananas, like the tips, what they look like. And sometimes these experiences give me nothing but just a chance to disconnect from what's going on in my head and appreciate my surroundings a bit more. but very often I see something else, like the case with the bananas. I saw little bugs in those end bits, and that became a sculpture a few months later. So it all came from a very small observation, something that is so easy to overlook if we're deep in our thoughts. And I genuinely believe that there is a lot to be inspired by if we look carefully, if we listen carefully, if we're present in general. Like it, you know, it is relatable to pretty much every aspect of our life, about our senses, you know, yeah, pretty much anything. Not necessarily looking, but as I'm an artist and I'm a very visual person, looking is something that just comes more naturally to me, I think.
Yeah. Well, you're right. And I always said this also because nowadays, you know, people copy and start coloring in with paint or whatever. They even are in a museum looking through not their own eyes, but through another lens, that of the iPhone, of the phone. And I think, especially for artists, you can only come to what you do when you actively look and when you really start to observe every little detail. And even if nothing comes out of it, doesn't matter, but you use your imagination. So how important do you think that is also for other artists to really actively start observing what they see? And maybe not even specific, but the things around them in their own life, in their studio, whatever.
Yeah, I think observing is very important, but as I mentioned before, maybe it's not for everybody. And I believe that each artist has their own way of seeing things or listening to things. What's most important is being present and being connected to what you're doing, like being in the flow, you know, being there 100% without any distractions. And this is, I think, what's important. And yes, if for someone looking at an art piece through the screen of their phone is a way to connect with that piece better, is a way to, you know, perhaps frame it in a particular way that makes it easier for them to digest. I think it's their right to do so, as long as they're fully present and fully connected with what they're doing. You know, I think for me, creativity is about giving 100% to what you're doing at the moment without any distractions and really immersing yourself in the activity.
Exactly. But that also means that it can take time.
Oh, and absolutely. So,
yeah. And so the illusion of speed is not necessary within that. I mean, if you talk about the bananas, I can actually see that you do that, and it's lovely. I do it just to be in my own mind, but in the end, it can bring something.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And before you became a full-time artist, you also worked in advertising. You said that, and child clothing. You had your own brand. Have these jobs in any way influenced what you create now?
Oh, absolutely. I still love working with children. I enjoy doing workshops for children. And whenever I have an opportunity to connect with children during my art shows, I never miss a chance. I always connect with them. I find children amazingly open to pretty much anything, curious and inquisitive and beautiful. With regards to advertising, I think it's had a huge impact on the visual language that I use, and especially on my earliest works. You know that in advertising we are very limited in terms of time. So if a passerby hasn't connected with our advert within 3 seconds, we've lost them, because it's all very, very quick. You know, in advertising, you really need to grab people's attention. So we use lots of visual methods to make the work striking and memorable and instant. And if you look at my early work, the colors are quite bright, and there is no unnecessary detail in an image. Everything is crystal clear. You get it, and you get it very quickly. So this is,
Mm.
I think, what I learned from my advertising experience. But now I think I would like to move away from it gradually, because I feel that I would really like to bring more detail into my images and tell longer stories, like stories
Mhm.
that would
Mhm.
take more than 3 seconds to understand. And I also feel that my audience, my art collectors, are ready for that, that we are all past that stage of a 3 second thing. We're all ready to immerse ourselves into something more interesting,
Yeah.
and with a lot more layers and detail.
Yeah. I can imagine that. Yeah. And it sounds amazing. But when I look at, for instance, the zebra, he's hanging there, I immediately start create my own story. And I have like, it's good that you hang there because now that lion can't get you.
Mm.
Something like that. You're high up. You only have to pull in your legs if necessary, but something like that. So yeah, I can imagine that children are also very much drawn to this. And then I noticed that your tagline is household surrealism, which I love. But
Thank you.
how much of your work is inner child play and fun?
I think it always begins as something playful. It begins with an observation, a playful observation, or with a playful sketch, or I might see something on Instagram and think, oh, that's a cool idea. Like I follow
Mhm.
a lot of laundry accounts that just post laundry hanging on on clotheslines in different parts of the world. And
Mhm.
I study those photos meticulously, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, the way this collar is presented in this particular work is amazing. It reminds me of that and that animal, or that and that facial feature. And I quickly sketch that idea up the moment I see it, just to have it in my sketchbook to come back to
Mhm.
it later. And I think this is the most creative part. This is like the childish part, we can say. And then comes the adult part, when I look through my sketches, when I take my camera out, when I set it all up, when I think about materials to use and how to express the idea in the most powerful or in the most inspiring way. So yeah, I think just like pretty much any artist, I use different parts of my brain, different parts of my personalities in my creative process.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
this is how it all comes to life. It also takes a lot of discipline, of course, because
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
those images appear instant and fun, but
Mhm.
sourcing the clothing, making sure that everything is in the right position, like sometimes inserting wire in a particular piece to make sure that it holds its shape. So it's this process is a little boring, and so are some parts of editing. But I think I taught myself to see those things as grounding as well. Like there is this part of the process which makes me all excited and makes me jump with joy, and there is also a part that makes me calm and makes me focused and even relaxed at times, just when I sit down to finish what I have started.
Yeah, I can imagine that because um, art is a process, and creating art is a process, and not everything is fun. um, so yeah, you need that. And then I noticed something else. The titles of your work are sometimes hilarious, and
Thank
they also have a sound.
thank you.
They have a sound. Is that correct, or is that
Uh,
me?
so now I name most of my pieces myself, but in the past I collaborated with a copywriter and we brainstormed on the titles together. So I think it is her. Sometimes it's her influence, and a lot of the pieces were named after her suggestions. And she's a native speaker, so she helped me, I think.
Ah,
She
okay.
also taught me how to name my pieces. So now
Yeah.
I am more confident when naming
Mhm.
something.
Mhm. And you just talked about your clothesline animal series, which I absolutely love. I think the first that I saw was the ice bear with the little pumpkin on his head.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, do you have conversations with your animals? So you have your idea. You are in that process of hanging it on the line. It needs to be in a way that you want it. Are you talking with them? Do you have conversations, inner conversations, or?
That's a fun question. No, I don't necessarily have conversations, but I feel that every animal I create has its own personality for sure.
Yeah.
And this is what I feel when making the animal. So the cow was very easy to make. I felt that it came to me almost instantly, and there were no problems arranging the pieces on the clothesline. It was all very smooth, and the cow is called Smoothie, by the way. And
Mm,
the piece is about motherhood and acceptance
mm,
and ease in general. Whereas the cat was a bit of a nightmare, and it took me so long to come up with the shape first, and then to make sure that the shape is right, and that the silhouette can be read as a cat and not as a, I don't know, as a fox, and all those things. And also arranging it over two lines was the first time that I did an animal in such a way. Normally I arrange all pieces on one line. So there were so many complications in the creative process that I just laughed. You know how cats don't
yeah.
usually behave the way you want them to as a human being. So I had exactly the same experience making a cat. I felt that it had its own plans for when the work was going to be finished. And I just had to obey, and
Yeah.
play by the cat's rules and
Yeah.
not by my
Yeah.
rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that
Yeah. You
was,
know that if you have a cat, you do not own the cat owns you.
of course,
And
yes.
so, yeah, so
And this
that's,
is what I felt, yeah.
yeah, I love that so much. Yeah. And then the edible creatures series, and I can see you sit at the table spinning spaghetti around your fork, and then ping, the spaghetti man is born, the same as the wiggly snack.
Yeah.
And you already gave a tip of your process, but with the edible series, the spaghetti man, how is that the case? Like you're on the table sitting and suddenly you see that?
Oh, yeah, 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 and that happens all the time. Drives
Mm.
my family insane. We can just have dinner, have a nice conversation, and then it's like, "Oh, guys, wait, where is my phone? I need to take a picture very quickly. Look at this."
Yeah.
And then I obviously can't continue eating until I take a picture and make sure that it's all captured the right way. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I need to make
Mhm.
sure that the idea is there, that I
Yeah.
don't forget this idea later,
Yeah.
and that I am
Yeah.
able to recreate it.
Yeah. Yeah. That is important, right? If you see something, you think, oh, I remember that. And then you don't.
Yeah,
And
and
and then
I
suddenly you see
absolutely,
some other
yeah,
artist doing it. Yeah, but that was my idea.
that
Yeah,
was
but you
my idea.
didn't do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying when
Yeah.
I say that ideas float in the air. We
Yeah.
might all come across the same ideas, but
Yeah.
somebody goes forward with those ideas and someone doesn't. And I also have a few pieces that I see online, and I'm like, I should have done this. I should have done this because I had exact same thought, but no,
Mhm.
someone else did
Mm. Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I know. It's amazing how it works in the universe. I can have that. I wanted to make what was it? Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, but
Yeah.
then with different people,
Uh-huh.
fully uh, gay black people, and then suddenly someone had done it because I didn't do it.
Mm.
It stayed as an idea, and I made a sketch, and I never worked it out. And suddenly I saw it. I had like, okay,
Yeah.
bing, gone.
Need to act
um,
quickly next time.
you have to really act quickly. Yeah. And then I saw this, and I couldn't stop laughing when I saw this, especially also the title. But yeah, Andy Warhol.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
my God. Is this something you encounter just while walking somewhere? I can imagine that, but we
Uh,
all everywhere see faces.
I
But
see faces, but Andy Warhol is a composition. Like it wasn't there. The whole thing wasn't there. I saw
mhm,
bits in different places, and I
mhm.
thought it would be nice to combine them together. So Andy Warhol is superimposed, and um, yes, I think it's a combination of two photographs, or maybe even three. So it wasn't just hanging there. Unfortunately, I wish.
Yeah, but it. I mean, in that sense, the title Andy Warhol fits perfectly to Andy Warhol himself,
Hmm.
who cobbled things together and made them into another style or another way.
Yeah, he
So that those combinations, it is as if he said, "Hey, you have to do this because that reminds me about myself," something like that. I find it so humorful, and I
Oh,
love
thank you.
watching it. These things, this is art that you need on the wall to come into your room when you had a shitty day, and you see it and you can't stop laughing. Just feel good. That's what I have with your art. And you
I'm
also
so
have food.
happy, I'm so happy you feel this, Karen, because this is my intention. When I create my work, I want it to be a reminder to people to just take a different perspective on
Yeah,
what they encounter in their daily life and feel happier.
exactly. But well, then you do a perfect job, because I definitely feel that. Definitely. And you also have food for thought, and you make also furniture art and home
Yeah,
play series.
yeah.
So you literally see form slash art in everything. Is your mission, well, you said it, to make people happy and laugh with your art?
I think I am trying to make myself happy first. And this is
Mm-hmm.
why, I surround myself. So all the furniture pieces are the pieces that I have in my house currently.
Ah, yeah.
So first of all, it's a reminder to self. It's not that I'm preaching something to people, you need to be this, you need to do that. It's first of all a reminder to self. You need to be more connected with reality. You need to look around. You need to listen more carefully and actively. So all my work, I think, is an attempt to make myself feel better first, and
Mm-hmm.
hope in the hope of making other people feel better
Yeah,
too. Because I don't believe that we can make somebody happy unless we aren't happy ourselves.
that's
So
true.
I think
That's
that
true.
with my work, I am trying to, it's my healing journey. With every single work, I try to remind myself that there is beauty in this world, that it's all not black and white.
Yeah,
There are animals in the boring laundry pieces. A cupboard can be more than just a cupboard. It can also be an artwork. So it's this never-ending attempt to lift my own spirits and
mm-hmm.
hope that somebody else will join in and think the same.
Well, I certainly did. And yeah, I
So,
mean, it also is a great lesson in being aware of what you have, and to study it, because there's more into it than that you originally think there is
oh, that's
in
such a
in
great
in
point.
everything around you. I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. And to go back to the story with the bananas on a supermarket shelf, we are so quick to just grab something
Yeah.
without thinking about it, but
Mm,
also looking at appreciating that we have food that has come from so far away on a shelf, readily
mm,
available for us to buy and eat, that, that things we take for granted are so much
yeah.
more than they
Yeah.
originally seem. I think
Yeah.
this is also something that I need to remind myself more often, because it's just easy to dismiss those things and to bury yourself in your thoughts and in your routine. But it's so much more rewarding to come out of those thoughts and to get connected and to be more appreciative. I think it just feels differently. It feels so much better to be on that side of things.
Absolutely. And I remember that a friend of mine said, yeah, um, when I walk in Spain or in wherever, I look different at the city than the people of the city itself, because they're so used to it. And what you teach us with your art is that even in my house, and I do it now as a game for myself, even my house, apart from the floor in the toilet or the bathroom, where I always see faces, by the way, and figures, it's I appreciate the things I have around me, because I start to observe them and study them, and that is necessary. That is really necessary, to open yourself up to that. And that's a lesson that you taught me with your art too. I had like, okay, it makes me happy, it makes me smile. Then it makes me also, you have to be more aware of what you have around yourself, and then you can be really grateful for it, and don't ever be granted for what you have.
Exactly. This is how I feel as well.
Mm.
And it's not that I'm teaching a lesson, Karen. I think it's our surroundings that teach us all. You know, those bananas, spaghetti men, we all have them. And it's only a matter of really connecting. And I believe that we can all do it. I don't think I have a special talent. I think a lot of people out there could be doing the things I am doing. It's all a matter of really taking the time and engaging in the process.
Yeah. And that is, I think, the most important thing, taking the time. And taking the time means slowing time down instead of falling for the illusion of speed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. Such a pleasure talking to you.
Where can people find you? Because I will put that in the show notes.
Yes, people can find me on Instagram. I also have a website and I do international exhibitions. My next one is in Canada in April. I am going to be there in Toronto from the 9th through the 12th of April. And then I'm going to be in Brooklyn and hopefully in Basel, Switzerland in June. That is still to be confirmed. Oh, and in Korea in March. So if you have listeners there, I'd be more than happy to welcome them to the new exhibition and to connect.
I will write that down. And yeah, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Thank you, Karen. Really nice talking to you. Thank you so much for your questions.
You're welcome.